Now, Christianity has its 13th apostle, a faithful witness to the love, mercy, and truth of Jesus Christ. How about you? Will you be the 13th apostle?
My soul, there is a country above the stars. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the 13th Apostle, where we explore the good, the beautiful, and the true of the Catholic faith and the Catholic Church. This is Tom Caffrey with my co-host, Dan Duddy. Hiya, Dan.
Hey, Tom. How are you?
Good. Well, I'm always good with these episodes. This is like, now we've got the ice cream sundae, and we've got two cherries on top.
It's true.
Who are those two cherries, Dan?
Well, we have Deacon Chuck Kelly,
otherwise known as His Holiness.
Oh, true. And let's do what you have to say for Jim. And we have our dear friend, Jim Mulvihill, otherwise known as
His Irascibleness.
You want to do that one over?
That's hilarious.
I think we're gonna have to.
It's going to be a long night, isn't it?
Bartender. Oh, gosh. We only serve holy water here, right, Deacon Chuck?
That's right. Absolutely. On tap.
Well, first, let me say the name of that hymn was My Soul, There Is a Country. And it's composed by Hubert Parry, Parry, from Songs of Farewell. Very appropriate. So, my soul, there is a country far beyond the stars where stands a winged sentry, all skillful in the wars. There above noise and danger, sweet peace sits crowned with smiles, and one born in a manger commands the beauteous files. And it goes on from there. So this discussion was prompted by all it takes, ladies and gentlemen, certainly among the four of us, is one comment, one question, one challenge, sometimes just a sound. I was reading my news feed a couple of weeks ago, and I came upon a headline, and I read the story. U.S. gives $1 billion a year to Russia's nuclear agency, and it's for the need for. And ladies and gentlemen, you can't see the smile on Jim's face right now. It's not a smile of joy. It's a smile of knowing. We talked about, the headline has, as I said, 1 billion. Jim has often said, follow the money. So the U.S. is purchasing uranium from Russia. So I said, immediately I sent that, took a screenshot, sent it to Jim. And, it's kind of, ladies and gentlemen, it's kind of like, depending on the day, the length of Jim's fuse. But I'm like a walking match that's already lit in search of Jim's fuse. But anyway, this really upset me. Okay, so as I said to Jim, so we're buying Russian uranium, but we borrow 40% of that billion from the Chinese Communist Party. We get that money, we give the money to Russia, but now we're helping Ukraine in their war against Russia. And we're helping them with 40% Chinese Communist Party dollars. And I said to Jim, so where's the patriotism in that? It seems so cynical. When you think of a year ago now, we concluded the non-war in Afghanistan, trillions of dollars spent, many lives lost, mangled bodies. In a week, the Taliban takes over. What's patriotism? What's love of country? And probably the most significant is for us in the context of faith. So we have two veterans here, Deacon Chuck and Jim. And Dan, you hoist the flag?
I hoist the flag.
Do you hoist the flag?
Well, absolutely. I'm the son of a proud World War II veteran. I missed the Vietnam War, though. It ended in my senior year. Yeah, so I love my country. I was raised to love my country.
So what's country?
Well, I'm not too sure what you mean by asking a question like that. I love the United States of America and everything that she stands for underneath all this fluff. I believe that we keep fighting the fight. We will come back to hearing God and country again. Of course, my Lord, God the Father in heaven comes above all. So, yeah, I mean, we're in confusing, chaotic times. This too shall pass. And the church will always endure. We've got to keep fighting the fight. We've got to be a bigger voice than what we are. We talked about this last week. I gave a talk last week at a high school in Philadelphia on a Wednesday. Our good friend Mark Hauk spoke on Friday. Now hear this out. And we were talking to confirmation students, and we were talking about confirmation in the upper room, and the Holy Spirit and soldiers and all those types of terms, and standing up for the church and standing up for something. When Mark went up to speak on Friday, one of the catechists, an older gentleman, said, "Hey, I heard you speak at Man Up Philly. Why don't you tell your story?" And he told the story he switched gears, told the story about the FBI. And he said to the youngsters, this is the United States of America we're talking about here with regards to, the rights of the babies in the womb. And he said that the kids, I wasn't there, he wasn't there for mine, I wasn't there for his. He said the kids went crazy, wild, in a very positive way to fight the good fight. But one of the Catholic leaders in this school came down and took the microphone out of Mark's hands and would not let him finish the talk because it had to do with politics. Never happened before in Mark's case. And I said, something, Mark, you want to talk about being in a tight squeeze? You're in a squeeze between the United States of America, literally with the FBI blowing down his door. And here you are talking about the truth of how, our country is quashing or trying to quash Catholicism. And the microphone gets pulled out of your hands. Yeah.
All right. So we'll circle back to that. A couple of questions. Jim, what's your, should I read some of what you replied to me?
You like, yeah.
Well, because you've been in a number of conflicts over the years. You said a very, all caps, very complicated conversation. Love of country, distinguishing country from government. Proxy wars are fought in many places. And I believe you said that that in a way, or maybe more than just in a way, Ukraine is fighting our war with Russia. We use the Mujahideen. We supplied them with weapons against Russia, in the 80s?
Yep. Yes, sir.
And on and on. So I know you're patriotic, but I asked you, I said, well, what is that country? It's an ideal, it's an abstraction. Deacon Chuck, you were in the Navy, right, Deacon Chuck? So you're going to follow up with Jim, from your perspective. Go ahead, Jim.
Tom, we had started to have this conversation, I think it was last weekend at your house, where you had posed the question to me, what is a country? What does a country mean? I think in the case of the way this country was founded, our founders thought of this country as both an idea and an ideal to strive for. And up until very recently, I always thought we were striving for that ideal, striving to be the best, the fairest country that we could be. Dan, my brother, I love you. I got to tell you, but I don't think I've ever been as disheartened as I am right at this time in my life. You think about the way we grow up. I believe that we're all children of the World War II generation. Deacon Chuck, you're a little younger than us. I believe you're the baby of the group here. Your dad might have been the Korean War generation, but our dads were all the World War II generation. We're all baby boomers. You might be at the tail end of it. And I grew up in the same town as Dan did. I mean, we grew up where love of country, which is patriotism, and love of God, your faith, went hand in hand. They worked together. They set the moral framework and structure of our society. And it just seems like there's so many internal forces now that are seeking to undo the promise of our country for all its faults, for all its original sin, people like to say. The framework was put there for good people to make this a better country. and through that to make this a better world. But right now, I remember every morning we started school with the Pledge of Allegiance and a prayer. No one complained. There was no parents down there threatening to sue the Board of Education because this was taking place. You had a pride in being an American. And I think we've, if not have lost that, we're coming close to losing that. We're coming close to what really makes us different from every place else in the world. There's very few places in the world people are dying to get into. Very few. We're one of them, and we're the magnet. And there's more reasons than just economics. If we're not very careful, as I said, I'm disheartened right now. I really am. If we're not very careful, what we grow up having, our children and grandchildren are not going to have.
So, Deacon Chuck, what's your perspective on the idea of because you called me about patriotism and you were thinking about the Holy Family in your comment and going to Egypt and what. So
yeah, and coming back. First of all, I want to address two things. So you talk about generations, and thank you for the compliment of being younger. But you know how you have these different generations and Gen X. I think I'm in the generation Gen 2XL. I think that's my generation. I think that's I think. I don't know. I get confused.
Not for long, though, from what I hear.
Well, right. Yeah. And also the difference between Jim and I, you introduced us both as veterans. There's a distinction there. I want to make sure that Jim is a combat vet. I'm not. I was during peacetime. There's a big difference. And Jim, you risked more. So you lost more. And I would say you probably remember more and remember differently your time in the service. That is an important distinction. There's a difference between peacetime military service and combat, being a combat vet. So I thank you, Jim, for your sacrifice and your.
By that, are you making it also a distinction that Jim is more patriotic than you?
I don't know. I was kind of.
You measure that? No. Let me jump in there and answer for Deacon Chuck. And I didn't mean to step on you, Deacon Chuck, but
no, that's fine.
Anybody who wears a uniform
mm-hmm.
at any time, peacetime, wartime, anytime in between, their service is to be honored.
Oh, sure.
Because we sometimes take our freedom and our rights and our liberties for granted. You sign up, you join the military. You're not operating under the Constitution of the United States anymore. You're under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is a little bit different. You can be ordered to kill. You could be ordered to die. That doesn't really happen in civilian life. If you have that uniform on, there's always that possibility. So anybody who wears the uniform, no matter when it is to be honored. Chuck, I honor your service also.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I certainly, and not to the discredit of those who serve during peacetime. It is a risk. There's always a risk. There's the potentiality of it. But to serve in the active engagement of war and to be engaged in combat, it certainly is a distinction I think worth mentioning. But I appreciate that. And that's a good comment. Thank you. I look at patriotism and the really love of country, and the way I look at it, it's a sacrificial love, really. And G.K. Chesterton talked about blind patriotism, which is, and he describes it as saying, hey, my mother, drunk or sober, of course we still love our mother, no matter what, even when we may not be so proud of her. And I think it's kind of Christ-like in a way. I mean, look at what, he loves his bride, the church, drunk or sober, or, and my goodness, he continues to love his bride, the church. To me, that's patriotism, right?
There's no intent there, though. If you're drunk, your reasoning is gone. And I think that the concern that Jim has is the intent and the reasoning of our governance.
Mm-hmm.
This is intentionally done to make these laws, put the pride flag in the middle of the White House columns, flanked by two Old Glories.
Right.
So they're not drunk.
Well, one might argue that, to look at this country head on with all its warts, its confusion, its discouraging behavior and but this is where our families have settled, for generations, we're where we make a living. And, when we compare it to the world itself, I mean, overall, we say lately, but overall, it's done a fair job of it. It's a beautiful country. I love it. And I love my country. And I'm glad that I've served in the military. And I'm glad to have, taken that pledge, right? Regardless of, how the state of the country, the question is, do we still consider this a friendship, with our country? And I don't quite, I think, Tom, you talk about the different levels of love, right? The storge, and I think this, what is a storge and philia, right? I think it probably falls in between somewhere there. But Jesus tells us, it's like no greater love than to lay down one's life for a friend, right? That's what a patriot does. He doesn't say to lay down one's life for a friend who deserves it, right? I mean, which is really what he did for us, even when we didn't deserve it. We weren't that good of a friend, and yet he laid down his life for us. I look at Christ as the ultimate patriot. There's my model. How do you measure it? Well, how do you measure up against Christ?
Well, it's interesting to look at the root of patriotism, pater, pater familia, our father, the fatherland.
The fatherland, yeah, very good.
So there would be more pitter patters if people wanted to go back, and this kind of gets to what you were asking Deacon Chuck. What we talked on the phone about the Holy Family going to Egypt. Why didn't they set root in there? And for some religious reasons, but also you really couldn't separate them, and cultural and familial reasons, that their family, their fathers, so to speak, the temple, Zion, is there. And I think none of us would have as many the sounds of pitter patter of feet going back to the father than Dan would, by dint of the number of children. And so it's almost like there's a little nugget of patriotism in there with the house that Dan and Maura have, and that it's like all roads did lead to Rome. All roads seem to lead to the U.S., and all these family feet lead to a place in Ocean County, New Jersey, where Dan lives. The desire that, this desire you referred to, whether it's filial or storge, it's right. And the desire to be home, your children, Deacon Chuck. I just had my son visit me last night, Jim's Shay, the desire to be with these people. And you look at our teachings at our church, but also the philosophers, some of who happen to be Catholic, and our little nation is our family often. Who's your first? I can picture Dan, with this. Okay, I can call my brother something, but don't you dare call my brother something, right? So that patriotism, we're talking about the big sense with country, but all Dan's children will be patriotic to him, and to more as well. But I'm saying from the pater, the fatherland, of going there. And Dan, I don't know whether you ever thought about the idea of patriotism in your family being, forget about the flag, I'm talking about to you and Maura. It's a family.
Well, I've never thought about it that way, but you're bringing back memories of how I was raised, and the whole spiritual infrastructure of the nation was founded upon God, and our family was founded upon God. And my father, the paterfamilias, was absolutely the paterfamilias. And there were yes was yes and no was no. And we honored that. And here I am now raising my children much in the same way. So, yeah, I me's that's pretty interesting light that you put upon that for me, that the patriotism was in fact under our roof, and it was the United States of America and freedom of religion and the Holy Catholic Church. And, we were able to do what we needed to do to be who we wanted to be. There's something about the concept with these two good men that served our country here, about them being the players on the field and us being back home and being somewhat spectators to the players on the field. How could we ever know what they were doing, because they were in the fight. Yes, Jim was a combat vet, and Jim, you gave really good kudos to your dear friend Deacon Chuck here, appropriately so. But we back home, we're very proud patriots as well, and still am. I still am. Would I fight for my country? Would I die for my country if we ever invaded? I would. But back then, there was a seasoning of martyrdom in it then, because we stood so profoundly for God as well. Now, that's not all there. Amen?
Amen.
In our heart, it is martyrdom, of course, but not with country. Not with country.
Exactly. Not to country. You talk about martyrdom. I mean, Peter says in his letter in First Peter, we are sojourners in exile. We're in the world, but not of the world. We're St. Augustine, city of God. As Rome was falling, picture Washington, D.C., New York, L.A. falling. And hopefully the four of us at the four corners and others, millions in between, that we're that St. Augustine to say, okay, we're meant, like that hymn said, our opening hymn, there's a country beyond the stars. Paul tells us, right, Deacon Chuck, there's neither Greek nor Jew, male, female. I mean, do you envision waving the flag in heaven? Which, the three of us, I'm sure, we know that's where you're going. Don't take our word for it, okay? Because then you'll get cocky.
Well, I think we model that, right? All analogies limp. Everything is just a shadow of what we hope for in heaven. So I think in a way we can model that. In particular, when you talked about the maddening exercise of our buying that it's like Russia's having this enriched uranium yard sale. We just can't say no to. We have to keep buying this stuff, funding a war that even our own talk about. Hey, what face are you talking to me with? The president says, it's a brutal assault on the people of the Ukraine, and yet we're providing the cash for this exercise. So it is frustrating to see this in one breath, this harsh words, and yet they're so anemic. But I guess we can only model what Christ did here on earth as best we possibly can, which is again to lay down our lives for a friend. I was watching The Patriot last night, and as I was considering the topic that we were going to talk about, and I assume that you've seen that, the Patriot with Mel Gibson. There's a great line in there where, they're trying to convince him to go to war. And he says, why would I, because the king, of course, is a tyrant. He says, why would I trade one tyrant 3,000 miles away for 3,000 tyrants 1 mile away? And sometimes it seems like that's what we have, right? But the question at the end of the day is, even when it gets hard, even when it gets ugly and confusing, as it did with Christ, and today's Tuesday, we do the sorrowful mysteries. We exercise that and remember the horrible persecution and death. Are we willing to stay put? Are we going to put up with? Are we willing to go to war over? Are we going to die for something?
Are you willing to turn the other cheek?
Are we willing to lay down our lives for a friend? Yeah. So, there's the question. And
so how do you square that? You're a man of the cloth. How do you square laying down your life for your friend? So what is the context of that, and turning the other cheek?
Right. Yeah. Well, is it being done to me or another? For my own self, I shouldn't worry so much about my own life. It's really if someone were coming after, say, my family as an unjust aggressor, right? You stop an unjust aggressor if there's just action, right? And then, we have, our virtues, right? The cardinal virtues, cardinal from the Latin root cardinoi, which means the hinge from all other virtues swing from, right? So temperance, justice, prudence, wisdom. We have to exercise temperance. If somebody comes after you with a knife, you don't drop a nuclear bomb on them. The exercise has to be proportionate with the aggression, enough to stop the aggressor. If a country places some political sanctions on us, we don't carpet bomb them. It has to be proportionate. So it's the defense of, in the case of an unjust aggressor, is the way I would look at it.
Yeah, those examples were probably, I'm guessing,
a little inflammatory. Is it too much?
No, I used that term. I don't know whether it was to you or about you, cocksure.
Uh-huh.
With Jim, I want, like with the example you gave, somebody coming after a loved one or whatnot. Imagine it gets, I've seen in people I've spoken with in books that I've read the word murky. So I imagine in foreign conflict, it's, Dan said that, somebody, if we get invaded, so if there's a Pearl Harbor, something like that, which is a very different experience than you got to go, I don't know, 10,000 miles away. Maybe the people don't like you. Maybe they're not sure they want you in their country, or for all sorts of things. But Jim's got some experience in that. So it's one thing to say, okay, if somebody attacks, in fact, Jim, you said this the other day in the context of this conversation, our lengthy conversation we had at my house at the kitchen table. And if somebody were to attack Shay or your wife, Brenda, as opposed to some of the missions that you were on, I don't know whether you thought about the flag or whether it was, it's like you had said, the guy on both sides of you.
Well, when you do the 10,000-foot view, you're in a combat situation, you're fighting for your country, you're fighting for your home, you're fighting for your family. But when it's boots on the ground, you're fighting for the guy on either side of you, and that's as simple as I can put it. And just, Deacon, I just want to slightly disagree with you a little bit, but in a combat situation, you really don't want your response to be proportional. You want it to be overwhelming, because that ensures that more of my guys are going to come home safe and sound. You want to be as quick as you can, as sudden as you can, and you want to be as overwhelming as you can in that kind of situation. And, it might be a distinction without a difference. I don't know, because if you take somebody's life, they're dead no matter how you do it, whether you drop a nuclear bomb on them or...
You want to stop the aggression and the future occurrences of it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, that requires some thought and some understanding as to what's it going to take. You have to know your enemy, right? And so, yeah, if I push the guy down, he's going to get back up as I'm walking away. And so, I mean, you do what's necessary, and that's really your call, right? If your focus area is a particular village, right? You're not just going to wholesale slaughter every living soul there.
No.
I mean, you're going to be targeting the aggressor.
We are going to keep the audience hanging a little bit in suspense. Because we have used up our allotted time. But we are going to have part 2 of this conversation. What's coming up next?
Stay tuned, folks, for The Angelist and Your Prayer Intentions with Peter and Jimmy.
And stay tuned for part 2, maybe parts 3, 4, 5, 6. This is going to go on and on until we reach eternity. God bless all. And thank you for this platform. WQPH Radio, Marianne at the helm, our leader, fearless leader, or even if she has fear, she's courageous in going forward, right, Dan?
That's right. Amen. God bless you, Tom. God bless you all.
God bless you guys.
God bless.
Thank you for listening to the 13th Apostle with Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey. For more information on Dan, visit his website at www.danduddy.com or email dcduddy@gmail.com. Tom's website is faithpilgrims.com or email trcaffrey@faithpilgrims.com. How about you? Will you be the 13th Apostle?